Okay, g'day Steve. This is your off-grid system, your Victron solar system. So we'll start off by just showing you what each device is and how it all starts and where the power starts from and where it goes to, and then I'll go through a little bit about your controller, about how to see what's happening and how to start your generator and things like that. So we'll start with first, come off the rank is the battery. So basically everything starts from the battery. So this is your battery box here, your BYD battery box, a 20 kilowatt hour battery. If you come around to the side here, you'll see we have battery system DC isolator number 1. So this is your first battery isolator, and then you also have a second battery isolator because we need to be able to isolate this inverter, which is your battery inverter, and your solar inverter, which is directly coupled to the battery. We need to be able to isolate them separately. So this main isolator will isolate both, and then this isolator here will just isolate the solar inverter. So that's what the two isolators will do for you when you're isolating it as part of the procedure. You also have another DC isolation point on your solar inverter, which is your PV array DC isolators. So we have two of those here today. So PV array DC isolator 1 and 2. Basically those two isolators will isolate the solar inverter as well. So battery, solar inverter. The solar inverter charges the battery directly, so it's what's called a DC coupled solar inverter. So basically the power comes from the solar panels into this box, comes out of this box straight into the battery and charges the battery. This here is your battery inverter. So your battery inverter takes power from the battery at 48 volts. It changes it over to 240 volts, which gives power to the switchboard, and then things like your light, if you're showing the light, your lights and your power points, all that sort of stuff works from the 240 volt supply. So basically that's in a nutshell how the system operates. Now we'll go through a little bit about how to see what it's all doing on the screen here. This screen here is the monitoring device for Victron. It's called a Servo GX. So on here you can see all the devices. So you can see in the bottom left hand corner you can see the battery at 37%. You can see the solar charger, which is the solar inverter that I just showed you. That's at 5,500 watts of charge coming in from that at the moment. The load, so that's how much power you're drawing off the system. So we have a light on and the battery charger for the generator. So that's about 50 watts of energy that we're using at the moment. And then you can see the status of the inverter. So the inverter is on, and there's a nice green light there to show that it's on. So basically, with this here, you can also start the generator from this device if you want to. If you want to do a test run, or you need to use, if you're going to use a lot of power at some point in time and you want extra power available, then you just basically press on the screen here in the right hand corner and a little menu button comes up. Press on the menu button and then you get the menu come up, which you can see the devices in the menu there. But we want to go to settings, and then in the settings you scroll down until you find the one that says generator start and stop. So quite self-explanatory there. And then you scroll down again until you see the one that says manual start. And then basically we turn that on and that will manually start the generator. You can also put a time in here and that will manually start the generator and just leave it on for that period of time and then turn it off again. So you have two different options there on how you start your generator. And then you just heard the generator fire up behind us, so we'll go around and have a quick look at the generator. So this is your 10 kVA generator, your blue diamond generator. You have an emergency stop here. If you do use the emergency stop, you will have to reset it on the screen. So there's a little reset button here to reset the emergency stop if you ever use the emergency stop. Basically, you also have a stop button here if you want to stop it without using the emergency stop. I'd probably just use that one normally unless it is an emergency. And then this is your circuit breaker for the system, so if this is tripped then obviously you won't get any power out of the generator, so you make sure this is on in the up position like it is now, to make sure that it's ready to go. So on this controller here you can see at the top here we have off, manual, auto and test. So these little buttons here, you can scroll across to the different settings. We want to leave it in auto at all times. We have a generator battery charger plugged in permanently so that the battery in the generator will stay at a nice level, and this display can stay on for as long as it needs to. So this display has to stay on. So this is your on switch for your display here. Leave that on. Make sure the brake is on and make sure that's in auto. That's your normal way the generator should be at all times. isolator is behind the door, so if you do need to do work on the generator, you've got a battery isolator just here. Sorry, probably a bit noisy there, but yeah, that's your battery isolator in that door. Come around the other side. You have your refueling point here, obviously put diesel in, it's a diesel generator. And then in here, you have your fuel filter at the top and your oil filter down the bottom. And there's also, this is your primer here, if you need to prime, put more fuel in, if you're running out of fuel, you need to prime it, that's about it for the generator. Now we'll go through and I'll show you the generator on the screen, working on the screen in there, and then we'll go through a shutdown procedure to show you how to safely turn the system off. So now on the screen you can see your generator's popped up in the corner here, and there's power coming in from the generator and basically coming into the system, and you've got your charge coming in from the solar as well. So you can see everything working together here. So that's how that works. We'll turn that generator off now, not to waste some fuel for today. So back into settings, down to generator, start and stop again, and basically down to the manual, and turn it off, and the generator will stop in a minute. There we go, the generator's off now. So we've got a bit of quiet again. We'll just go back to the main screen. So this is the main screen, and you can see now we don't have any generator. Now we just have the PV charger charging, and the battery charging up, and the little bit of load that we're using with the light and the power points running off the system. So basically now we're going to go through the shutdown procedure. So basically, if for safety and also just to be able to, because you've got a lot of wiring happening inside the house here, there may be a point in time when you need to turn the whole system off so that someone can work on the switchboard. If your Sparky wants to use our switchboard, he can, because there's a lot of extra room in that switchboard, but it's up to him whether he wants to use that one or put his own one in. And if he has any questions, he can give us a call. So basically the shutdown procedure is next to the switchboard here. So battery DC coupled shutdown procedure, so that's the type of system you have, a DC coupled system. So step one is turn off the main switch inverter. So you've got main switch inverter here, so basically turn that off, and then you can see our lights just gone off. So that's the main supply to this switchboard, is the main switch inverter, so obviously that's why the power's off. Now if the generator was running, then basically we would have power from the generator at the moment through that system. But because the generator is not running at the moment, obviously there's no power. So that's your next point of isolation is the main switch generator. So turn the main switch generator off. Then the next one is turn off the main switch UPS EPS supply, which is your main switch for the installation here. So off position is in the middle. There's a description of how this changeover switch works. It's a 3-position switch. So up, number 1. So if I put it back to the up position, you'll see the number 1 here. That's the solar system. So that's everything working together. The solar, the battery, and the generator all working as one. Basically then off in the middle position here. And then down the bottom in the number 2 position is genset. So if something goes wrong with the system and you need power, then basically you can manually start your generator using the buttons on the generator screen, and then flick the generator breaker on with the switch in this position, and all your house power and lights and things will have power from that point straight off the generator if there's something wrong with the system and you can't get the system going at the time. So we'll put that back to the off position, put those back to the off position. So that's the first 3 parts of the shutdown back over here. So main switch inverter is off, main switch generator supply is off, main switch UPS EPS supply is off. Now we need to turn off battery system DC isolator 1 and 2. So basically turn off main switch battery system DC isolator number 1 is over here. Turn that one off. Main switch DC isolator number 2 is this big one in the box. Turn that off. And then we turn off the PV array DC isolators, which are these 2 here. So that's your full shutdown. So that's the last 2 steps. Battery system DC isolator 1 and 2, we've turned them off. Turn off PV array DC isolator 1 and 2, which are these ones in the middle here. They're now off. Now your system is fully isolated. There is one more point if you need to do a further isolation, but that's more if you need to reset the whole system, where you actually turn off the battery as well. So to turn off the battery, there's a button on the BMU here. This is called your BMU, your battery communication unit. There's a little button under here where you can see the little power symbol on the front, and you press and hold that for about 5 seconds. Yep, this is making as much noise as I want. And then basically the lights on the battery are all off. Now the battery is off. Now if you do shut down the battery like that, you can't turn it straight back on immediately. It's got lots of electronics inside it that will stay on for a little while. So if you do a full shutdown and turn off the battery as well, then when you restart it, you will need to wait, about a minute before you can turn it back on. So we'll just give that a few seconds to fully turn off, and then we'll turn it back on in a second. So yeah, well that's probably long enough anyway. So just as long as you don't turn it back on immediately straight away, it should turn on fine. So basically, we'll turn the battery on. So we're going to turn the battery on using the top battery button. We'll press and hold it, and then we should hear the other batteries all click in. You can see the lights all coming on. Now all 5 batteries are on. And then basically these lights will go from blue and white like they're flashing at the moment, and they should go to just a solid white when they're ready in standby, ready to operate. So you can see now we have a solid white. We've gone from the blue white, which is the startup or the fault lights on the battery, to then a normal standby light ready to go. So basically to turn it back on, we follow the procedure in the opposite fashion to what we turned it off. So we turned off the PV-array DC isolator 1 and 2, so we're going to turn them back on. So PV-array DC isolator 1 and 2, we turn them back on. We're going to turn on battery system DC isolator 1 and 2. So we had over here battery system DC isolator number 1, this big switch here from the off position to the on position, and this big switch in the box up to the on position as well. Where's that? There we go. Up to the on position. And then you can see everything's starting to turn back on. The inverter's turning back on now. You'll see this screen come back on in a minute. Now we've got to turn on the AC. So main switch UPS EPS supply is your big changeover switch. Put that back up to the number 1 position, the normal position. Turn back on the main switch generator supply. So that's this second circuit breaker here. And then turn back on the main switch inverter supply, which is that one there. So that's a safe de-energization and a safe energization of the system. Follow that procedure in that order because it's in that order for a reason, to make sure that things are done safely. And then basically turn it back on in the opposite order is how you turn the system back on. There's only one other part of the system that I mentioned when I was out of the generator, which is your generator battery charger. So here you have your generator battery charger. So basically that's plugged into this power point here. Leave that plugged in, leave that turned on. Your battery will go flat and your generator won't start if you turn that off. Basically the generator needs a constant little trickle charge to make sure that it can stay in auto with the screen on for the operation of the system. So today we've installed 3 power points for you, one here, and one over here in the corner, and the light. We've left the extra power points inside for you for your Sparky to use that you purchased as part of the system. And other than that, we're all good. There's only one other thing I need to show you is the on-off switches for the 2 inverters. So on the Victron they have a little toggle switch on the front. So on is in the normal position up the top here, off is in the central position, and then charger only is in the bottom. So you can use that charger only position with the Victron if you have a time when basically there's been very little sunshine and the battery's gone flat, and then for some reason the generator hasn't started and you've deep discharged your battery down to a really low level and you want to just restart the system, but you want to restart it without having any load on the battery so you can get some charge in before you put the loads on. So if you flick that down to the bottom to the charger only position, manually start your generator and then go and start the system from the battery forward like we just went through. Then that will allow the battery to get some charge straight from the generator to top itself up before you turn all your loads back on with the system. And then once the battery gets up to around 20% or more, then you can turn all the loads back on in the switchboard, flick that switch up here back to the on position, and you'll be away again. So that's sort of a emergency procedure for if you've flattened your battery too far, that you can then charge your battery. But obviously with the type of system you have, a DC coupled system, the solar inverter will do that anyway. So if that does happen to be a day where there's a reasonable amount of sunshine, then all you'll need to do is just turn off your main switch here, put that into the middle position so that there's no load coming off the system, and just allow the solar to put charge into the battery for a while until you get over 20%, and then turn your power back on using that with that switch there. So you've got two options there to recover your battery if you ever do get a flat battery, which is one of the main advantages of the DC coupled arrangement. And other than that, I think, yeah, that's all we need to go through today. So I know it's a lot to go through, that's why I've done a video for you. It's just watch it through a couple of times, and maybe do the shutdown procedure and startup procedure while you still don't have anything really working at the house here, and just make sure you get yourself familiar with it, because the day that it actually happens you might get a bit flustered and things like that, so you want to make sure that you're familiar with it before you get to the day when you actually need to do it. So thank you very much for your business, Steve, and if there's any issues you can give us a call and we'll work it out from there. But other than that, have a good day, and I hope you enjoy the system. Thank you.